Hello everyone. This is the first video in a series directed towards middle and high school students who want to conduct research in material science or those who simply want to learn about the chemistry of atomic structures and their applications. This video series was made by STEM for Tomorrow, a nonprofit organization dedicated to inspiring young students to conduct research in STEM. In this first video, we're going to be covering some of the basics of atomic structures. So what exactly are atoms? Well, atoms are the basic unit of an element, for example, oxygen or iron, and they are also extremely small. In fact, if you took a single sheet of paper, the width of that paper is enough to fit about 600,000 atoms all lined up. Atoms contain a nucleus in the center, which is made out of protons and neutrons, and electrons that orbit the nucleus. So it turns out that electrons don't exactly orbit the nucleus because quantum mechanics makes electrons interact in pretty weird ways, but for all intents and purposes, you can think of the negatively charged electrons orbiting the positively charged nucleus. So protons have positive charge and neutrons have no charge, making the net charge on the nucleus positive, and the electrons have negative charge. So you may remember that opposite charges attract, and that is why negatively charged electrons orbit a positively charged nucleus. In a neutrally charged atom, the number of protons exactly equals the number of electrons to make the charges cancel out, and atoms in combination can form many different and commonly occurring patterns, which is extremely interesting. So first I want to go over some terminology. Elements are substances that can't be separated into simpler substances with the same properties, such as oxygen or iron, and compounds are groups of two or more different elements. For example, carbon dioxide, but not oxygen because oxygen is made up of two of the same atom. And molecules are groups of two or more atoms bonded together, and subscripts indicate the number of atoms of each element in each molecule. For example, in diatomic oxygen, O2, each molecule contains two oxygen atoms, and in glucose or sugar, each molecule of glucose contains 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen atoms. So this image right here is something called the periodic table, which lists all the elements and some of their properties. So there are 18 groups, which each have different properties and go vertically, and also 7 periods, which also have different properties. So on the left and towards the middle of the periodic table, there tend to be metals, and towards the right, there tend to be nonmetals generally. And the most common elements, such as hydrogen and nitrogen and oxygen, are found towards the beginning of the periodic table. So, if you've never seen the periodic table before, this can kind of look like a mess, right? So let's break down what the periodic table actually is. So this is one unit of the periodic table. This is phosphorus. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see the number 15, which is the number of protons in every phosphorus atom. And this is unique. A phosphorus atom is defined in that it has exactly 15 protons, and that is its atomic number. In the middle, you can see the element symbol, which is essentially a shorter way of writing phosphorus that everybody can agree upon. And at the bottom is the atomic mass. So remember when I said that the nucleus is composed of protons and neutrons? Well, the atomic mass is the average number of combined protons and neutrons. So here you can see it's a decimal number. Well, that's not because there are fractions of protons or neutrons in the nucleus, but it's because that each phosphorus atom has a different number of neutrons, and a phosphorus atom with a different number of neutrons is called an isotope. So there are several different isotopes, and they occur in different concentrations. So that is why we have a decimal here. And um, here we can see the electron configuration, which is a little bit more complex, and I will go in depth into this in the next video. So let's talk about bonds. So molecules are formed when atoms bond to each other, and there are three main types of bonds, which are ionic, covalent, and metallic. And the bonds mainly involves something called valence electrons. So remember how I said that electrons orbit the nucleus? Well, they orbit the nucleus in different orbits with different radii. So there are electrons that orbit very close to the nucleus and the electrons that orbit very far away. So bonds mainly involve the electrons very far away from the nucleus on the outermost shell because uh, they are the most capable of leaving the atom or sharing orbitals with another atom and forming bonds. So the first type of bond is an ionic bond. So an ionic bond is usually occurs between a metal and a nonmetal, and it happens when one atom sort of donates electrons to another atom. So in this diagram, you can see that there's a lithium atom on the left and a fluorine atom on the right. So this atom, this electron, which is a valence electron of lithium, uh, gets donated to the fluorine atom. And so as a result, since electrons are negative, when lithium gives up this electron, lithium becomes positively charged, and when fluorine accepts this electron, it becomes negatively charged. And since opposite charges attract, these two atoms become bonded. So examples of ionic bonds are NaCl or sodium chloride, which is the same thing as table salt, and lithium fluoride, which is shown here. So the second type of bond is a covalent bond, and this happens usually between multiple nonmetals, and it involves a sharing of atoms. And examples include chlorine gas and carbon dioxide. And covalent bond is the most common type of bond we will be investigating in material science. So another less common bond, I should not say less common, but less useful to us, is a metallic bond. Essentially, occurs uh, among just like what it sounds like, among different metals. So, what essentially happens is that the electrons sort of leave the orbits around the nuclei, and then they sort of flow freely in between all of these nuclei in this positively charged soup. So when the electrons leave the nucleus, the remainder of the atom becomes positively charged because the negative electrons are leaving. And so the negative electrons are essentially flowing around freely. And so examples include iron and gold. So that is going to conclude the first video in the series. So I will be releasing another video soon, going more in depth on atomic structures and how exactly we can investigate them in the field of material science. Bye.